Before we start the show today, just a quick word from our sponsor. If you love fantasy football, with DraftKings you can play the game and win cash. Sign up for free and win up to £150 this weekend. Just go to draftkings.co.uk/Fulham right now. That's draftkings.co.uk/Fulham and you could win up to £150 just playing fantasy football for free. Right, cue the music please. Hello and welcome to Fulhamish podcast. My name is Sammy James. This is the weekly show that goes in studs up on everything to do with Fulham FC. On this week's show, we'll be discussing Saturday's game down at Brighton as a second half showing that was a load of old cock and Baldock condemned us to a fifth defeat of the season. We'll also be discussing Fulham's youth system and, exclusively, we'll reveal the result of our Forgotten Fulham poll. Now, Slavisa may have tinkered with his team on Saturday, but here on Fulhamish, we've got a far more consistent starting lineup. I'm joined as ever by Farrell Monk.
Hello.
Ben Jarman.
Good evening.
And Jack Collins.
How you doing?
So it was an interesting game down at Brighton on Saturday. Mixed emotions, really. A great performance in patches. Surely not many teams will go to Brighton and play them off the pitch like we did in the first half. We still came away with 0 points. I'll go back to that initial point that I just made. Jack, not many teams are going to go down to Brighton and play quite as well as we did in that first half.
No, they're not. And we were exceptional at periods in that first half. We kept possession so well. And I thought that in patches, we looked dynamite. And even though, you know, the problem with that is that we look like we're able to tear teams apart without being able to, you know, put the nails in the coffin as such. And even if we were brilliant at times, it was a scrappy goal that put us in front and we should have been, you know, far away out of sight. And I think we said a few weeks back that teams are going to start to punish us if we don't put our chances away. And the same way that we did against Brentford. And, you know, it's come to a point where that's happened from a bigger and better side than us. You know, at the end of the day, even though we were brilliant first half and we were far and away the better side.
Arguably, Ben, do you think that Fulham took one of the hardest chances of the game when you look at the ones we missed? Yeah. K-Mac's header was actually probably the most difficult. I mean, it defied physics, actually.
Yeah, to get that much power on the ball from quite an awkward starting position was...
He was behind the goal line.
Yeah, it's like a really good finish, but I think he got a bit lucky because obviously Stockdale fell over. And had he not, probably would have saved it. But I think I agree with Jack, though. We kept possession brilliantly. But we just lacked a little bit of incisiveness that we had, especially against Brentford. And then definitely against Huddersfield. We sort of lacked that. And if we're going to contend at the top, then we need to bring that back into our performances week in, week out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we started this podcast at the same stage last season, we'd probably be saying exactly the same thing. That we were quite well in possession and we did create quite a few chances, but we just didn't put them away and then we're just caught on the counter-attack quite a lot. This last Saturday seemed to be same old. But it's good that we were, you know, breaking down a very, very good Brighton team who have, you know, bit of a surprise package this season. So that's quite encouraging. But we do definitely need to punish teams when we are on the ascendancy, and therefore we can get those 2 or 3 goals up, be comfortable, and then settle into a system where other teams are hard to break us down rather than the other way around.
Interestingly, I thought the way that Brighton approached the game actually allowed Fulham to play their style much more. We discussed a lot last week on the podcast after we'd played Sheffield Wednesday. They didn't allow us to play our short passing Sheffield Wednesday. They made us go long every time, and that's why we struggled. I noticed that Fulham didn't have that problem against Brighton. They much more sat back off us and allowed us to play our short game, which really allowed us to carve them open so much.
Yeah, I think instead of allowing us to go long like Sheffield Wednesday did, like you said, Brighton sat back and therefore it allowed us to play the nice combination stuff in and around the box. But getting in behind them, like we tried to with Aluko, Aite out wide, it was then really difficult for them to get to the byline and put in crosses or to cut in and shoot. And we only saw that on maybe 2 or 3 occasions. Maybe one where Aite and Aluko sort of had a really good combination on the edge of the box, and it led to Aluko shooting dangerously. But other than that, I don't think we really got in behind them like we normally do against other teams, which obviously Brighton's compactness stops us doing that.
That exact one, that chance, I believe, they gave it as an offside.
Yeah.
And it was looking back on the replay, it wasn't. It was a very, very, very good run from Aluko. And it was one of those moments where, it looked at that point with Aite and Aluko combining and switching that we were really, really starting to cause them problems. They didn't like us running at them, but it seemed to sort of halt towards the end of the first half and then, into the second, that we didn't have that kind of dynamism between the two of them. And it sort of it looked like it almost put Aluko off, that, the fact that he was caught offside with that move. And it was actually he wasn't, for one, and two, it was probably the best bit of just, interchange that we did all game.
Yeah, surely you've got to ask yourself how much Aluko would be worth if, one, he could finish, and two, if he managed to keep himself in check when he was through on goal. I listened to a podcast on the way into work this morning, talked about having an emotionless striker, i.e. like a striker that when he's through on goal doesn't overthink, doesn't get very excited or sees himself in the headlines.
Berbatov.
Ibrahimovic.
Like an Ibrahimovic or a Berbatov and someone like that, someone who's ice cold and just puts the ball in the back of the net, rather than someone like Aluko who you could give 900 chances to and he'll spur them all apart from one. Like, I think we need that sort of like incisive striker that's just going to put the ball in the back of the net and not think about it.
Well, we mentioned after the Brentford game how even though we played very well during that game, it was a great performance, a great night, we were 1-0 up. We missed a host of chances throughout the game, both in the first and second half. And I know we went on to win 2-0, but that was right at the end of the game when Brentford were chasing it. And we said a better team than Brentford would have equalised. It would have been an undeserved equaliser. And had Brentford maybe equalised, they could have gone on and won at that game.
Yeah, they would have the momentum.
Yeah.
I think it showed on Saturday that you can play as well as that, but you've got to take your chances. And that's surely the key reason why we didn't win.
We say it quite a lot when we look when we're in the Premier League and in the Championship, that you do have those teams that are at the top of the table because when they play well, they win. When they don't play well, they win because they have that one chance and they put it away. Could you imagine? I can't really see Fulham at the moment, if we don't play well, grinding out one or two chances and actually putting them away. I hope you agree with that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, I do. I think, like, Martin, again, has gone a little bit quiet. I think we need to get him firing again. It would just be nicer to see that those lines getting a little bit closer. I think we talked about that against Sheffield Wednesday last week.
Yeah.
The lines were quite a distance apart, and although they got closer this time around, allowing us for a little bit more of an interchange, Martin at times does look a little bit isolated.
I thought he was really good first half.
Yeah, I agree.
Rewatching it, and and there was a lot of. I saw he came in for a lot of stick after the game, and which I thought was slightly unjustified. I know we're all Martin fans, so it's all a bit here and there, but I thought that he held the ball up well and he was giving it, and there was moments where he really was class, and the turn that set Aite away, where Stockdale made that unbelievable save off the deflection. He took two players out of the game by holding them up, coming through the middle and releasing Kearney, and it was one of those ones where you're like, top class.
Yeah.
And you see that occasionally with him, and obviously he's not being as consistent as we want him to be, but he is still holding up the ball well and bringing people into play. And I think every time he loses a header, people start to lose their head with him, because he's not going to win every header because he's not Matt Smith, but he does hold the ball up and bring other people into play in a way that I don't think anyone else does or can offer us at that point. And there's a lot of people being like, oh, we need a speedy striker. Maybe, but I don't think as a replacement. I think maybe, if anything, as an addition.
Yeah.
I noticed in the first half there was a piece of skill from Chris Martin that got me literally purring. It wasn't a particularly memorable moment of the game, but I think the ball went back to Button and he had to do a very rushed clearance. So it went spooning into the air and it was coming down towards Martin at a rate of knots. And he had one player he could find, and it was Tom Kearney. Tom Kearney was surrounded by 4 different Brighton players. And off his shoulder, he found Tom Kearney's chest. It was a really lovely moment. And he was just like, wow, that is so many strikers that would have come off one random limb and gone to a Brighton player. He had no one around him apart from, it was pinpoint accuracy to Tom Kearney. And that's what the quality of Chris Martin gives you. And I think moments like that go underrated sometimes by fans watching.
I think one of his main attributes is that although he's definitely not the quickest striker in the world, his movement is really, really good. He just needs to know where he knows where he needs to be. So like, he just pulls those central defenders this way and that gives the room for players like even like Malone and Fredericks to pop off. Like that chance with Malone where was a great save by Stockdale. But we don't need that really quick striker. We've got loads of quick players around him, and with his strength and his movement, don't need a quick striker at all. He doesn't have to run those channels. He just has to operate that 10 yards in and around the box area, which, I mean, I can get around there and I'm not the quick.
Realistically, if you're going to play a quick striker, you're going to play him in Luco's role, sort of behind and running off as those things. So I don't think it's one of those. And Luco's quick. He might not be able to finish, but he's quick.
Yeah.
And
it's a very easy thing for fans to say, we're not scoring, we need a new striker.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Chris Martin and any striker that goes for a bit of a dry patch, even if it is just 2 or 3 games, instantly feels that burden of pressure. I think that's why so many strikers get so relieved. You can see it in their faces when they do score. And it's not ecstasy of scoring. Half the time it's just relief of breaking the duck because the pressure's off, sometimes for like another 90 minutes at least.
You go back to this 2008-9 season where we had Zamora and Johnson up front, and I mean, they weren't firing on all cylinders, but both of them brought so much to the team that you wouldn't dare drop them if they didn't score for 4 or 5 games. Them two together were unreal at times. I think the top goal scorer that season was Andy Johnson with 7 in the league, but we finished our highest position ever.
7th.
Yeah. So you wouldn't, like their movement and their play and interchange with all the rest of the team, they were undroppable. And just because they only scored 7 goals, who gives?
There's much more to a striker than just goals. It is, like you say, link-up play, the movement. We've already touched on Martin's movement, his link-up play. So what if he scores 10 goals a season? As long as we get our main aim, which is obviously playoffs or to be promoted, then really who cares?
And as an 11-a-side player playing up front, that's what I always say to the manager. It's more. I'm more than goals. I'm more than goals. I run the channels. Do you see my work rate?
I'm yet to see that yet.
So let's move on to the second half. Their goal did feel a bit inevitable after we went in only 1 on the break. And this is a very impressive Brighton team when you look at the stats. It only conceded 10 goals in 16 or 17 matches before this. That's an amazing rate. They'd been 12 unbeaten. They turned over Norwich 5-0 down at the Amex. They look primed for promotion. They really, really do. They were impressive. It was a good goal by Baldock, not Baldrick, as I have written on my notes. Autocorrect with a slightly apt correction there. Not too much could have been done to prevent that goal, really, could it?
it's a great strike.
Yeah, it's a really, really good strike.
It was quite well defended and nothing you could do about it. You just got to hold your hands up and go, no, fair play.
However, the second goal, I feel like, could definitely have been avoided. Glenn Murray's top scorer for Brighton, back in favour with the Brighton fans after his very controversial move to Palace. Not many players leave for arch rivals and then come back, and seems to be come back to an all right reception.
He's an idol down there, isn't he?
Yeah, amazing. After he quite left them in the lurch as well to leave to Palace. I mean, out of all the clubs, when you're a Brighton player, you do not leave to go to Palace. But I mean, the main question for me: why was Callas so far out of his area, and what was Scott Malone doing?
It was just all a bit bizarre, wasn't it? It was a very strange sort of set of defending, and I don't know. I'd love to hear an explanation from someone, but I can't put a finger on it, so I'm not going to try it. I think it's just a mix-up.
Yeah,
I think that's all it can be put down to.
I think that Callas did what sort of defenders do usually. They clear the ball, or whoever did actually clear the ball, then sort of got out the area, tried to not play them all onside. I think I would lay the blame with Sigurdsson slightly because he didn't actually follow him out.
Callas was actually the guy that should have been putting the pressure on their crosser, who I believe was Gaetan Bong, because Callas tried to clear the ball away beforehand. I looked at it quite detail, and he didn't get it away as much as he should. He clattered into, I think it was Fredericks by this point. He'd come on the pitch. And then instead of actually trying to block the cross, sort of stood there with his hands by his side, trying not to deflect it off. And you're completely right. Sigurdsson didn't bring the back line up. And Malone to be sitting there with his hand up instead of marking someone, it just feels a bit of Sunday League. Like, there were so many errors. I've got 4 written down just like before the cross even goes in. So it really is terrible defending. And it's just like, it was a flashback to last season. It was shoddy at best. But on the upside, we do, other than that slight glitch, we have looked much, much better at the back all throughout this season.
Yeah, agreed.
So it could be, like you said, it could be just a massive miscommunication on their part.
Clear-cut chances, apart from the goal and obviously the volley, I can't really think off the top of my head any real clear-cut chances
Not at all.
that came from mistakes.
Murray should have done better first half when he got slipped in by a knockout.
Yes.
What a run that was, by
Yeah.
the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And a lovely ball as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah.
and what a ball as
But
well.
that, like those, you just hold your hands up. That's not bad. That's really well played from the opposition.
I think that could be the difference between like Brighton going up and us potentially not going up, is that they have someone like Knockout, who we touched upon last week as well, who really is like that sort of grade above Championship level, and could probably cut it in the Premier League for a lower rung team. But like in the game, he was just so incisive and very purposeful with his runs, and I think that's something we need to mimic.
Quite amazing
Some of our
he
players.
hasn't had a chance
He
in the
was
Premier League.
so brilliant for Leicester. I remember watching Leicester in the season one that they lost in the semi-final to Watford, and the season they went up. And one of my best friends at uni was a Leicester fan, and we used to sit and watch Leicester most weeks. And he was like, "Oh, Vardy's going to be an unbelievable player." I was like, "No, he's not. He's rubbish. He's not very good." His qualification goal was like, the magic in this team is Anthony Knockaert by a country mile, the best player in this side. And he was as well. It wasn't that it might not have been proved to be that at that level, but he was the best player in that side by such a distance. And he just transforms things. He makes things happen out of nothing. He's one of those kind of players that just changes games in an instant with a little flick and a little jink down the run, and suddenly you're in. And it's one of those where those moments of magic can turn such tight games. And it means the world to a team. If it's 1-1 with 10 minutes to go against Burton Albion and you can't find a winner, and suddenly Knockout beats 3 players and slides in your striker, and suddenly it's 3 points instead of 1. That's the difference between going up and getting in the playoffs.
Do you not think Tom Kearney can potentially be that man?
Yeah,
Centrally, yes. Wide, no.
yeah.
I think we should devote a whole podcast to the Tom Kearney wide and central.
It'd just be 50 minutes of Ben going, central, not wide, central, not wide.
I don't know, the amount of times that Bong just got at Adoy and Fredericks down that left-hand side, it was just blatantly obvious that something should have been done about it.
It was that second half I noticed how many counter-attacks that Malone and Adoy and then later Fredericks were just exposed. One, we were going for the win, and then obviously trying to get the equaliser.
Yeah.
It was kind of going back to the same old from the beginning of the season when our fullbacks were really, really exposed.
Really stretched, yeah.
On the wings. I mean, when there was one point when Malone got to the byline, put a decent cross in, didn't come to anything, and it fell to, I think it was Bong on the right, and he was like 40, 50 yards up. And it was only Malone who had the chance to get back at him, and he had to, God knows where they get the energy from. But it was him that was having to do that chasing back rather than one of the centre midfielders coming out.
Maybe we're getting it wrong, but when we said that we started playing really well again, in that Huddersfield game and in the Brentford game, we saw Kearney in the middle, correct? Am I imagining things?
I think we did,
because
yeah,
Kearney seems
maybe.
to have gone back out to the wing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we are just imagining that when we started playing well, Kearney was in the middle. Or that actually happened and it's changed again.
It could be, and this happened in the Sheffield Wednesday game, that our team was getting frustrated at the lack of opportunities, probably like the second half at Brighton, and players do get out of position, especially the more creative ones, because they want to see the ball more. And if they're not seeing the ball more, they're going to go. Kenny will go to the wide. Aite will go wherever he wants to go.
Yeah, Aite runs all over the shot.
Yeah,
he was
exactly.
excellent as well.
I like him a lot.
He was
Yeah.
very, very good, and he deserved a shot. I've liked Piazon. I thought Piazon's been doing well, but I thought Aite was good value for
has
his.
that extra directness, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that we can choose in between these attacking
We
players.
still haven't seen Cabano come in for a couple of games. He had a little cameo at the end there. Didn't do much other than get hauled down, I think, outside the area. That was it. And
That was in a last act of desperation, really,
yeah,
from
and-
Savisa, wasn't it?
yeah, and then there's no sign of Hosebed either,
No,
No.
who seems to have gone back.
He seems to be
Just wondering-
frozen out.
I feel like he's wandering around New Malden. Like he
Somewhere.
can't find his way back to the training ground or something. So how much of a setback was Saturday in terms of the bigger picture, in terms of the league? Do you think it's a disaster, or do you think that we can pick up again and just brush it off as it's a very good team who are very likely to get promoted? who are also happen to be on a very good run of form.
Yeah, I think we can pick it up as that. I think there are a lot of positives to come out of it. We've already discussed like how easily we broke them down. Our combination play was brilliant. I think it's a similar situation to the Norwich game, in that although this result wasn't entirely positive, we showed that we can cut it with the better teams in the league. We showed that we can cause them a problem. We're just maybe a little tiny bit away from getting to their level. And maybe come January, a couple of good signings will be at that level. But I think it's not too much of a setback now, and we just need to pick up points in the right places.
Absolutely agree. Brighton are a team who have absolutely rolled over the last 5 teams that they've played. Norwich 5-0, Bristol City 3-0, Burton 3-0, Nottingham Forest 3-0, and we gave them a bloody good game. Apart from the Glenn Murray goal, which was just an absolute
shambles.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking at getting a point when not a lot of us would have expected. So,
and a lot of Brighton fans on Twitter I saw were really complimentary about Fulham, and that isn't the first team that we've gone away to and we've received plaudits. I remember when we went up to Leeds, and so many of their fans were saying after that game that this is one hell of a team, and a lot of them said, we were lucky to get the win. And then I think quite a lot of them were going on, if we can win that, then, there's good signs for them. And that is totally true. They did play very well they got a very good result without playing very well. But yeah, it'd be good to take those plaudits forward. When did the table really start taking significance? It's starting to fall into shape now.
Yeah.
We're still there or thereabouts, although I'm quite surprised at some of the teams that seem to have suddenly caught up. Derby.
Leeds.
Yeah,
Leeds are flying.
Yeah.
And, we went to Leeds and I thought Leeds were really poor, really, really poor. And they were lucky to get a point against us.
Reading have picked up recently as well.
This is what I was about to say. I was going to say, you look at that Brighton game, and we've gone away to a team that are flying and at the top of the league, and we've given them a good game. I think the game that coming up against Reading that we look at and we go, if we can win that, then we should be looking at a playoff place, and that's the kind of game that I think gives you a level. We've looked at that Brighton game and gone, yeah, okay, there were mistakes and whatever, but we were good and good value for it. And if that game comes, if you go away somewhere and lose 2-1, and you look at bringing Brighton back to the cottage and trying to get a point or 3 points there, then you're playing here and there, tit for tat with the league leaders, or the promotion candidates. Sorry, and I think that's kind of got to be a positive. So if we could turn over Reading now, then we definitely got to be looking at putting some pressure on those teams in the playoffs and starting to build.
We look at Reading, and they have won 5 on the bounce under Yapstam. They are flying. It's going to be a really tricky game on Saturday, and we'll delve a little bit more into that. Their run of wins: Rotherham, Forest, Wigan, Burton, and Bristol City. Now, we haven't played Rotherham. We've played the other 4 teams, got 3 draws and a defeat out of them. It's making me quite frustrated now that we've played about half a dozen games against teams who, apart from Villa, were all in the top half of the table when we played them. And I think Villa will be a team in the top half of the table, especially now under Steve Bruce. We didn't take our points earlier in the season during September when we had a really, really simple run of games. And it's coming back to haunt us now. We're playing stronger teams.
Absolutely. It's classic Fulhamish that we're taking on teams every week that seem to be bang on form. And when it comes to other teams playing them, the ones that, as you quite rightly pointed, the ones that are in the bottom 6 or so, that's when they're on form, and then they will roll them over easily. When we were playing those teams, we were still finding our feet, trying to find our, as Ben always points out, our identity. Now we finally got the identity. Now we're playing the Norwiches, now we're playing the Brightons, now we're playing the Readings, who are really on top form at the moment.
Yeah, I've actually got that written down that when we played those teams, we were trying to still gel.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use identity, just out of spite. We were still gelling as a team back then, and the likes of Burton especially came to the cottage and just sort of shut up shop. I mean, of those 5 Reading wins, 4 of those have been against teams that are currently residing in the bottom 6. So you could say that obviously there's no easy games, but there are easier games for teams, especially teams like Reading, who are now completely adjusted to the Championship and know what it's like to be in there. and manage those workloads. I think we have a good chance against Reading. I really do. I think we're a solid, competitive team in all areas of the pitch. We just, we just need to get another win, and we'll get rolling. I think. We're much better than we were back in September. That's for sure. I don't know if you agree, Jack.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Reading are there for the taking if we play to what we can do, and if we demonstrate what we're made of. I'd be interested to see what he does for the team now and what he changes for next week, because I don't know if you can justify dropping anyone from that selection, but at the same time you've got people straining at the bit to get back in, and like we said, we haven't seen Cabano in a full run out yet. We haven't seen, well, in fairness, we haven't seen enough from him to maybe justify that, but when are you going to see that unless he gets a game and unless he gets a full 90 minutes?
Yeah.
So, there are players straining at the leash to get in the side, and, you've got that, now we've got a right-back dilemma in terms of who we play at right-back, and, and Scott Parker coming back into the side. Do you after what he, brought to the team when he came on against Wednesday, do you start Parker?
Yeah.
And you can't, I don't think you can drop Johansson, who was excellent again.
Absolutely not. I mean, they talked about him on commentary, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Said that he got substituted in the first 30 minutes of his debut. And now he's seemingly undroppable, and I think we all have to agree with that. He's been absolutely brilliant.
They've been listening to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're listening. And
shout out, Jim.
yeah.
Shout out, Jim. I'll give him a text. So going forward after the Reading game, it puts quite a lot of pressure on the other games we've got in December, because if you actually look forward, we have got an easier run of fixtures tailing down to the end of the year. You've got Rotherham, who are rock bottom and seem doomed. I mean, we said that, though, last year, and then Colin Warnock came. What's his name?
Neil Warnock.
You can't call him Colin.
Yeah. If in doubt, call them Colin.
Neil Warnock came in and saved them. Then Wolves, who have got Paul Lambert now, who's a manager I've always
Admired.
He's the hipster.
I do like Paul
choice,
Lambert.
isn't he, Paul Lambert?
Big fan.
Derby are improved under Steve McLaren, but I still think a winnable game at the Cottage. And then Ipswich away, who are very much a Jekyll and Hyde side, the Championship perennials.
Well, they're having an awful run of form at the moment, but
yeah.
you'd imagine that Mick McCarthy's going to turn that round in the next few games, which means that they'll almost certainly be on excellent form by the time we play them on Boxing Day.
I kind of feel for Ipswich fans, because it seems like they're consigned to mid-table mediocrity every single year, because they get to January and they're like, we really need to strengthen, and then the chairman turns around and says, we have no money, and then they're just like, right, well, we'll just slog it out for the rest of the year, shall we?
Well, they do moan about being in the Championship, but would they prefer to do a Charlton or a Southampton of old, or Wolves, and go down to League One? I'd rather be in the Championship.
Yeah.
To be honest, with no money, they're quite lucky that they have McCarthy, who I think is a wonderful manager. I really do, and I think that he does so well with the little he's given, and I think to a point. And they said this on the Football League show on Saturday morning. They were like, to a point, Ipswich fans must have to be like, we're really making do with not very much. And Mick McCarthy, they were saying there's been a few shouts for his head after a couple of losses, and they're saying that's madness. To see what he's achieved with that side. He's got a couple of club playoffs, I believe, in the last.
Yeah.
And to see what he's done with that side on very, very little cash flow is exceptional. I think that they're very lucky to have him down there.
They actually sold their lead striker this year as well to Newcastle, Daryl Murphy.
Yeah.
He hasn't made an appearance for Newcastle yet. Not 1 minute of play, I don't believe. And
they still got McGoldrick. That guy used to love scoring against us.
They have, and he's consistently injured from what I've been told.
Good stuff.
Well, Mick McCarthy teams always seem to deliver against Fulham. Have we beaten Ipswich since going down to the Championship? I don't think we have.
No, I do remember playing them opening game this season and losing 1-0 or 2-1 to them.
2-1.
We had Cameron Burgess playing DM.
Yeah. That was the game that Tim Hoogland scored.
Yeah.
Absolute scenes. No, but the game I recall against Ipswich is the one where Freddie Sis scored after something like 28 seconds.
Yeah.
And it was one of those days where we got to the Cottage and we were in great spirits. I was like, we're going to do Ipswich today. I've just got a feeling. And then 28 seconds in, I was like, I don't know why I've come.
They absolutely rolled us over.
Yeah,
last
they
year.
really did.
They probably, it's the times we've actually come, but they were probably the most impressive team I saw last season. Ipswich.
They were. They sized through our back four.
Yeah.
I think it was Ream. It was Ream and Byrne, a centre back.
Oh, God.
And Freddie Sears, Burn went to head it, fell over. Sears got the ball, rounded ream and scored. And it was one of those ones where like, okay, we're in for a long afternoon.
Dan Burn
here,
is
aren't
the
we?
only person to get smaller when he jumps.
Well, looking on to the next game and then against Reading, I know you've said a good chance. I've always thought that a kind of team that we tend to play fairly well at the Cottage. Last season's game, for me, probably one of the most memorable ones, apart from maybe the 2 Queen's Park Rangers victories. 2-0 down after 50 minutes. Orlando Sarr, who we may or may not mention later in the show, scored that second goal. And then 4 goals in about 10 minutes has got to be one of the most remarkable comebacks I've ever seen at the Cottage.
We had absolutely nothing before we scored. Absolutely nothing that game. And then we got that first goal, and all of a sudden, we're going to win this game like 10-2 or something ridiculous. We had so many chances after that.
I remember going to the Premier League game when Brian Ruiz scored that absolute belter, 3-0, yeah.
He came on. He came on because someone went off injured. I can't remember. Someone came off injured, and he came on and just absolutely ran the show.
Yeah, he was absolutely brilliant that day.
And a certain Hal Robson-Kanu scored in the 90th minute after we'd turned it around 3-2. Again, very reminiscent of what we saw in the Premier League on Saturday at the Liberty Stadium, for the 5-4, which is just... I mean, I know this is a Fulham podcast, why we're discussing Swansea, but I mean, I've never seen a game like it.
Also, like, can we talk about the fact that, you know, Fernando Llorente, who was one of the most feared strikers in Europe like a year ago, is now just playing on the bench for Swansea? Like, what's going on?
Did you see his 2 goals?
No.
I thought, he's going to...
Brilliant.
Yeah, like...
Basque legend.
Yeah,
I've just chucked him in the fantasy league team for you know, they're the kind of decisions that win you or lose you leagues.
They were 2 of the luckiest goals you've ever seen.
Okay,
it was just like I think one of them came off his knee, and the other one he wasn't even looking at it, and it came off him.
It was literally which team could defend worse.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move back towards Fulham, and there was some big news away from the pitch about the training ground improvements, and I'm not going to lie, I'd quite like a game of 5-a-side on those pitches.
It looks really nice.
If anyone's listening to the club, we are available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Against the Forgotten Fulham 11, but 5 of them. They can have 6 subs.
Yeah, okay.
If Cottage Talk won a 5-a-side game.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be an expensive 5-a-side game for us. But apart from that, more than happy. They were very keen to emphasise that it was entirely funded by Shahid Khan. And they're clearly intent on continuing the youth investment. And I know we briefly touched upon the youth team last week, but it'd be interesting to chat about Fulham's youth system in kind of a wider context. I think one positive of relegation to the Championship is suddenly we have started to see the fruits of the investment and certain players coming through, and Patrick Roberts leaving for big money, Musa not really leaving for big money, but, you know, leaving for a big club. And, you know, we do have some of the youth players. They're not quite in the first team at the moment. We've seen the likes of Lasser and Corley all come through the system. But my question is, in the day and age where we've got all this scouting networks across the world, we've got this Moneyball system that can find hidden gems on a football pitch in the remote Andes, or...
Sakiri Matilla.
Yeah, exactly. Literally playing on a snow-covered pitch in northern Lapland. Like, it seems to be this system where we can pick up bargains. Is it worth spending all this money on a youth system when you could just build up a great scouting network and just cherry-pick the players you want?
Absolutely. For me, absolutely. It works. I think there is a multitude of players that are even in the Greater London area and around southwest London who aren't going to be scouted by another club. And if you want to get those players into the club, or even if you want to get them to support the club in the long term, then to have a scouting network that actively encourages them to play is only a good way to go. And I think if you look at the wider context of world football, anyone that's in that mid-tier, so sort of like anywhere outside the Premier League or Serie A, or even like the lower ranges of those leagues, for them winning a title is having a player they've paid no money for, and then selling them off for huge money. And that for them is obviously the aim now. Unless they somehow drastically pull a title out of the bag like Leicester have, their only real objective would be to sell a player on for a huge amount of money. And for me, that absolutely makes business sense that we're involved. We're now expanding our youth scouting system and getting those facilities in place for the long term. We've seen it working short term already, and it was only a few years ago that we didn't have any youth players in the England setup whatsoever. And now we've got Sessegnon in there. We've got guys in there at under 17 level.
We've got both Sessegnons in there, haven't we?
Both Sessegnons in there. We've got a guy that's like 15 years old that's being scouted by Man United already. And that would never be the case if we didn't have a good scouting network in place.
I think with
Sorry for the long answer.
No, it's fair enough. I think with the money that's in football these days, and this is going to sound like back in my day. But
how are you?
Yeah, exactly. With the money involved in football these days, it's going to be one of those things that every time we sell on a player, it's going to be some money. Even if that's to a League One club and we get 100 grand for someone, people forget that that's still a lot of money. And, while there's been money ploughed into the youth network, it's never going to be the amount that you'd get for selling on 5 players to decent level clubs, And if you have to, you put in 12 million from Pat Roberts and you look at that money and you're going, well, imagine how many players we could bring through for 12 million pounds. And if one of them sells for £5 million, we made a profit on that 12 million sale. And, it's proved to work. Pat Roberts is from Wimbledon. He lives in Wimbledon and he's now gone through and he's up at, winning titles at Celtic. Did anyone see the picture of him and Dembele with the cup?
No.
Roberts posted a picture of him and Dembele with the cup with the caption, "My guy." And it was like, oh, okay, right, yeah, I see what you've done here. But, yeah, but you look at those players coming through and there's always going to be, if you're producing the quality that we seem to be producing, there's always going to be a profit to be made. And I know that's not necessarily the point, but it's never going to lose you money.
Yeah, so do you think it's basically almost like a means to an end? So yes, not necessarily these youth players will come in and create, a great Fulham side like the Lisbon lads of Celtic back in the 60s, where the whole team came from one city. But actually it's a case of some of them may go on and do well for Fulham, some of them will leave for big money, and then you have that wider scouting network that can find bargains from the money that you've made from youth players. Is that how you guys see the strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got an article coming up on fulhamish.co.uk.
Yes.
Very soon, that sort of speaks about this and how the role of the modern scout is sort of diminishing, but then at the same time you have to have a really good balanced scouting network, either that's through stats and like the Football Manager style scouting, or whether that's down the park in the rain with your fags, like scouting. There's got to be a balance there, and if Fulham want to aspire to be like anyone who are going to produce players, and it should be the likes of Sporting Lisbon or FC Porto, who are already doing that well. And I think like selling players is going to be one of our key KPIs now as a club. We're just in that mid-tier. We need to make money, and the large scouting network's only going to be a benefit, and the facilities even better.
We seem to be at a much more advanced level than most of our teams in and around us in the Championship. I think a lot of the teams in the Championship at our level are very envious of us. Their revenue streams are nowhere near as going to be developed as our youth system is. They won't be able to look around and go, oh, they've just sold Pat Roberts for 12 million quid. What was the last player we sold for 12 million pounds? Never happened. It is a massive bonus to have something like that. But Jack, you quite rightly pointed out, it also comes down from those little players that played that 1 or 2 times for Fulham and then get sold on for 100 grand. That probably is the youth player budget for the whole season. And
I think if we look at Forgotten Fulham, it's a good way of being like how well we've come on. Like some of those guys haven't even made a first team appearance, but then someone we haven't even chatted about just yet is Emerson Hyndman, who's gone to Bournemouth, and we will make some money off him.
I think we made
2.5 million, I think.
So that's another bit of profit as well.
He is going to be a brilliant footballer.
But there's absolutely nothing we can do about it.
No, not at all. I'm not upset about it. And also I'm glad for him that he moved to somewhere like Bournemouth, where he will get game time, and he's under a brilliant manager there in Eddie Howe. And he also seemed like a genuine kind of bloke. That was the other thing about Hyndman. He always had time to tweet fans and, to reply to fans. My brother kept chatting to him on Instagram. It was all a bit weird. But, it's one of those where he always seemed to be genuinely interested. He loved the club. But but it was time for him to. He wasn't getting games at Fulham, really, to be honest. You look at him and Roberts and like that, and people are like, "Oh, why did Roberts go?" If I was Roberts and someone said, "I'll give you £12 million," it's £12 million to sit on the bench for City or sit at the bench at Fulham. He wasn't getting game time,
and that's absolutely fine because he is going to be an exceptional player. But we just couldn't play him at the time because we were kind of in a relegation scrap. We needed someone that was good now, not that wasn't going to be brilliant in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
So, and this, with this whole youth system thing, it's not just making money. If we can get the player who is going to play really well for us for at least one season, i.e. Dembele, or any other player, then it is worth it because otherwise you're going to spend £4 million or so on getting someone elsewhere.
we need to make
However,
sure.
I agree with the points that you're making from a business sense, but from a romantic sense of supporting a football club more than I support a business. Like, obviously I don't want Fulham to go bust, but I don't support Fulham thinking, £4 million profit, well done.
I do.
Net profit as well. I mean, Farrell's the accountant here, so he loves that. But something for me is like, well, I can't be bothered to. I want players to do well and play for Fulham. I don't want them to play a dozen games like Emerson Hyman did. We see a flash of him. Oh, great, we've got this great youngster come through. Oh, he's gone. So I guess there's that element to it that the fans must be going, well, what's the point? We make these youth players and we just sell them straight away.
Isn't the revenue then used in the playing budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then we could, I don't know, it's kind of like a finger in the air, but it's like, surely if we make that commitment now, then long term we will start to see these academy players come through and have a really big influence on the team going forward. And I think we can sort of see that coming now with like Adrenian, who's played very well, especially against
Really
Borough,
good.
and Dunn, he done very well. And I thought that was a good performance. And I think there are a few more players that we're going to come and see coming through from those youth ranks that are doing really well.
There was this
for a long period of time.
This youth strategy started like 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, and we're already seeing the fruits of it.
Yeah,
so
and we won the
years?
World Youth Cup,
Also,
world champions for God's sake, 2 years ago.
Also, if we're looking at the moment, we're playing these players and we're selling them, like to Pat Robertson and co, and that money's being reinvested in the club, and it pushes us forward as a club, and I think we're improving, I really do. And if we then get back to Premier League level and we're a mid-table Premiership club again, those players aren't going to start leaving for the likes of Bournemouth or Southampton if they're getting a game, because why would you leave for another mid-table Premiership club as such? So if we can see the fruits of those progress the club further, I think then later on players will stay and will be part of longer runs and units. And I think that's important.
Sorry, just one last point. This investment now allows us to keep our grade A or grade 1. It allows us to play in the EFL 2, I think, which is like the premier class for under 21 level, which is only going to make them better as well. If you lose that status, effectively your reserve team, your under 21 team is playing Sunday League football again.
Yeah.
And also, I guess,
there you go.
for someone like Shahid, who must be frustrated because he's a multi-billionaire, his massive yacht dwarfs HMS Belfast in the Thames, and yet he cannot invest in his football club, which I'm sure he wants to do. And I know a lot of people doubt his intentions, and who really knows what his true intentions are. But there's no doubt, surely if he could, he'd write some blank checks and buy the best players in the league, but he can't. But this is kind of almost a loophole, a long-term loophole, and there's a reason for it, for him to be able to invest money in the club, because this is not counted under FFP if you invest money in facilities and youth training and stuff. So
it does seem to be that that is exactly the point right there, that Shahid Khan does want to invest in this club, and it is a good thing that the club have come out and said, look, our chairman does care. He does want to invest in this club. I think also that, I was watching that interview with Alistair McIntosh when he was doing the official opening with Richard Scudamore.
How bored did he look, by the way, Richard Scudamore?
Yeah, definitely.
He's going to fall asleep.
He didn't say anything the whole time. He was like, come on, let's get on with it.
Thanks. Just open the thing.
But it was good that also it's not just about the football club, it's also about the wider community as well. And they talked about areas of London that, you wouldn't think that Fulham had any reach in, but they were talking about Lambeth and towards Hammersmith and down towards. I didn't think they mentioned it there, but they're very well embedded in Surrey already. It's not just about the first team; it's also about all the women's football development, which is starting to become a really big thing. They had the Badgers there opening it as well, which was great to see as well. So it's not just about the first team. It's about
the blind or deaf team win a championship the other day as well, and they were voted Team of the Year in one of the awards.
Oh, really?
Premier League awards, yeah, I believe so.
I think if you are looking at the club and you're saying that Shah Khan doesn't invest enough and isn't invested, you're living in a fantasy world. Like, I really do think that with everyone that comes out and goes, Khan, I don't know what more people expect him to do within the constraints that we're in. And I can't see how that's a mindset. I don't get it. It's one of those ones I can't comprehend.
And also like an owner shouldn't have to invest money. He just needs to ensure that the business is making money. He shouldn't have to invest any money, because otherwise what's the point of actually owning it in the first place if you're just investing money, because then you're not actually making anything.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think for Shahid, he inherited a club, he bought a club at a difficult transition point. He made mistakes, and I'm sure he would admit that he made mistakes, maybe not publicly, but they did. I mean, Felix Magath, all those changes, bringing in Kerbishley and Wilkins and trusting people left, right and centre, mistakes were made. And I think he's still, unfortunately, paying for that from the fans. And I think that horrible season or two is still very fresh in the mind of Fulham fans. And despite the investment, and I imagine that is why the club went out on such a limb to emphasise that he funded all of this.
I mean,
is happening.
Shard, like any businessman is very, very good at self-promotion. And if that to me is just a message to all of our fan base, even the guys that doubted him from the start, just to say, look, I am here for the long term. Yeah, I want an NFL franchise over here, but you're my number one priority, and I'm here to future-proof you for the long term. I agree with you, Sammy. Like, picking this up at the point that he did is just a disaster waiting to happen. Like, Al Fayed wasn't funding us and hadn't been for a few years before that. So
club in decline.
Yeah, anyone picking up that club, we probably would have gone through relegation regardless, because we hadn't had a pure investment in the club for some years. The playing squad on the pitch was terrible. Not even probably Sheikh Mansour of Man City could have saved us then. Even if he had bought Robinho for 32 mil, like we still would have gone down to the Championship.
I forget about that transfer.
The equivalent one that I think of is Tony Fernandes at QPR, because he took them over and bankrolled them trying to save them, and it just went terribly. But I definitely know out of Tony Fernandes and Shahid Khan, I would choose. I definitely have Khan every day of the week.
Yeah.
I don't want Tony Fernandes calling up I don't want Shahid Khan calling up Talk Sport every week and talking through transfers and talking through very, sensitive issues about the club. I was once listening to 5 Live, and Tony Fernandes was calling up and telling them how much Chris Samba earns a week, which is, could you imagine if your boss went on, just decided to reveal how much you earn a week? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Especially if you'd had a bad game.
Well, I think the most cringeworthy thing related to QPR in the last couple of weeks has got to be #Ollie's back.
Walking down the tunnel and kissing his hand and putting it on the sign. Do me a favour, this isn't Anfield, mate. It's a shithole. Get a grip. And their mannequin challenge was shit as well.
I mean,
The what?
Their mannequin challenge was cringeworthy as well.
Did they do one?
Oh, of course they did. It's Queen's Park Rangers.
I'm going to record that segment of what Ben just said and make it my ringtone.
Anyway, moving swiftly on, we've got to quickly end by revealing the results of Forgotten Fulham. Now, Forgotten Fulham is something that we've been doing for weeks. It's been a really good feature on the show. I've loved doing it, and I know loads of you have enjoyed listening and taking part on Twitter. And we revealed our team in the past weeks. But I thought a little bit unfair that we were getting in your suggestions. We made this big team and it didn't feel very inclusive. It felt very much like we're making a team and you're going to listen. So this week we opened it up on our website, fulhamish.co.uk. Go give it I was about to say a listen now.
A look.
Don't go listening to the website because not much is going to come out of it. We got you to vote. We gave you a huge shortlist of different Forgotten Fulham players that we'd mentioned on this show and also had been tweeted, and we hadn't even had time to address them. And now, here it is, the official Forgotten Fulham team. So we've each got a part of the pitch to announce. And this is it. And we'll put the whole team in 11 and we'll put it on the website after this episode. So, chaps, if you don't mind me starting from the back, it makes total sense.
Fire away.
In goal, number 1. I don't think he was number 1. Is Pascal Zubabula. Has made the entrance into the team. And on the bench, Kasaba Samogyi.
Hey.
Oh, yeah.
That's like what happens at the football games. Is the person on the pitch gets the big cheer, and then the sub just gets the. Hey.
Yeah, the really keen people.
So Pascal Zubabula, who I think made 1 or 2 appearances. The Swiss man is a deputy in goal.
Good.
Jack Collins, onto the defence, please.
The back 4 consists of Halish is on fire. Rafik Halish.
Nice.
Nicky Shorey, great shout.
Hey.
The Bone Crusher himself,
Hey.
Tony Callier,
We all love him.
Friend of the pod.
friend of the pod, and Martin Jetu. Who was a great
Jetu.
shout.
Ah.
With
Scored 1 goal against Leeds. I
Yes,
recall.
that was
Good
the
knowledge.
season they went down, I believe,
Yeah.
at Loftus Road. And on the bench, Jack.
everyone's third favourite Canadian Fulham player, Paul Stalteri,
Paul Stalteri.
and the one of our many prison signings, Elliot Omazuzi.
Fulham Prison FC.
Yeah.
Ben, the midfield, please. In your best Ivan Berry or David Hamilton voice, please.
Okay, first selection is the captain of the Czech Republic's best under-21 side ever, Marcel Getsov.
Hooray!
The second selection is a former Ajax player, amazing pedigree, played half a season for us, Iyong Eno.
Hooray!
I actually forgot
Good
about him.
pronunciation.
Thank you. The last player is a former Norwegian international who played for us during the Europa League run, Bjorn Helge Riise.
Hey.
Yeah, he was shocking, wasn't he? And the last, the subs for us today are a guy who spent 7 days at Trabzonspor after playing for Fulham, Hammer Buatsa.
Hooray.
And then
Still got a dodgy shoulder.
everyone's second favourite Russian at Chelsea, Alexei Smertin.
Hey. He was in our team, wasn't he, Alexis Mertin?
He was.
Don't know if you've noticed, but not many of these players were in our lineup.
We've got a few sub crossovers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a lot. This complete lineup is a lot more fresh-faced and recent than ours was.
Yeah. So we're going for a 4-3-3, which means that Farrell has the last 3 names in the starting lineup and then 2 on the bench. Up front, please, Farrell.
One of the Scandinavian recruits, David Elm.
Hey.
Everyone's favourite American striker, not the winger Clint Dempsey, Eddie Johnson.
Hey.
And he was from Portugal and Cosfuckle, Orlando Sar.
So they are.
Good.
That finishes off our starting 11.
Subs,
Just quickly
subs,
round off the
subs.
benches, please.
Subs.
I was getting there.
Any shouts to Pavel Pogrebniak?
I don't think
He scored way too important a goal
Yeah.
at Loftus Road once.
we have Roma's favourite son, Stefan Okakachaka.
Yes.
And, of course, the belly flop himself, Shefki Kuchi, who didn't score for Fulham, I'd like to point
Yeah,
that
he
out.
didn't.
Oh, didn't he?
No.
I got in a bit of hot water that Luke Cornwall did play for Fulham, and quite a lot of people fancied pointing that out
He
to
came
me.
through the youth network, so, it's obviously improving.
Well, there we go. They are the results of our Forgotten Fulham team. We'll post them online later this week, fulhamish.co.uk. Secretary Jack, what is the title of today's show, please?
I think we'll have to go for Cock and Baldock. I think that's
Cock
probably
and Baldock.
what we'll go for today. Episode
Episode 10.
10.
Episode
Cock and
10.
Baldock.
Happy
Exactly.
Yeah, we've made double figures, lads.
And we're creeping up on 10,000 listeners as well, so thanks to all you guys out there.
Yeah, I
cheers.
mean, last week's podcast was the most listened ever and also the quickest listened to ever. So, yeah, we're really appreciating you guys sharing it and listening every week and subscribing. It's all really starting to take off, which is wonderful because we love chatting Fulham with you every week. And we will be back next Monday. Are you all available? I haven't checked yet.
I'm in.
Yeah,
Farrell's in as
fit
well.
and ready.
There we go. The starting 4 will be back next week after the Reading game. Let's hope we have 3 points to celebrate, chaps. See you in 7 days.
take it easy.
See you then.
Bye.